Why traditional masters hated Bruce Lee number hash intro cold open. What if everything you thought you knew about martial arts was wrong? For centuries, fighting arts were bound by tradition, by rigid forms passed down through generations, and by masters who demanded unquestioning loyalty. They were beautiful. They were complex. And in a real fight, they were often dangerously impractical. Then came Bruce Lee, a rebel who looked at centuries of sacred tradition and had the courage to say, "There's a better way." This is the story of why so many in the martial arts world pushed back against their greatest innovator, and how one man's relentless pursuit of the truth forced everyone to relearn how to fight. Section 1. The problem with perfection before Bruce Lee, the world of Kung Fu was, in many ways, a closed society. Masters taught styles that were hundreds of years old, intricate, beautiful systems of movement that looked incredible, but were often more like a dance than a real strategy for survival. These were what Lee would later call the classical messes. The entire philosophy was to perfect the form, to achieve a flawless, almost ceremonial execution. But Lee saw a fatal flaw in this thinking. He believed that real fights are messy, chaotic, and don't follow any rules. He argued that strictly following ancient stances and techniques actually limited a fighter, making them rigid and predictable when they needed to be fluid and adaptable. This wasn't just a minor disagreement. It was a direct challenge to the very foundation of traditional martial arts. He was essentially telling the masters that their life's work was a museum piece beautiful to look at, but not very useful in a chaotic street fight. Section 2. The outsider who broke the rules. This rebellious thinking wasn't just talk. As a young man in America, Bruce Lee did something many considered unthinkable. He started teaching Kung Fu to non-Chinese students. In the 1960s, this was seen as a profound betrayal by many in the traditional Chinese martial arts community. They believed Kung Fu was a cultural treasure, its secrets to be guarded and passed down only to those of Chinese descent. Lee's schools, however, were open to everyone, including Hollywood stars like Steve McQueen and James Coburn. This angered traditionalists in San Francisco's Chinatown. To them, Lee wasn't just disrespecting their authority, he was giving away their secrets. The tension simmered until it finally boiled over, leading to one of the most controversial moments of Lee's life. The popular story, told by Lee's wife, Linda, is that the community issued an ultimatum? Stop teaching outsiders or face the consequences. When he refused, they sent a champion to shut him down. A respected Kung Fu master named Jack Meng. The deal was simple. If Lee lost, he had to close his school. However, it's important to know there are two sides to this story. Jack Meng and his supporters disputed this version of events. They claimed the fight was a result of Lee publicly boasting that he could beat any martial artist in San Francisco, and that the challenge was a response to his arrogance, not his teaching practices. Section 3. The fight that changed everything. The 1964 duel between Bruce Lee and Jack Meng is shrouded in mystery. It happened in private, with only a handful of witnesses, and accounts of what happened differ wildly. Lee's camp, including his wife Linda, claims he won decisively in under 3 minutes, chasing Wang until he surrendered. Wang's side, however, claims the fight lasted over 20 minutes and was essentially a draw, with both men exhausted. But who won the fight is almost irrelevant. What truly matters is what Bruce Lee learned from it. He was furious with his own performance. Even by his own account, the fight took too long, and he felt clumsy and inefficient. He realized that the Wing Chun he had dedicated himself to, while powerful, could be too rigid for the chaos of a real, no-holds-barred fight. This single, grueling fight was the crucible that forged his new philosophy. It was the moment he knew he had to break from tradition entirely and create something new, something that just worked. This was the birth of Jeet Kune Do, Section 4. The revolution of no-style Jeet Kune Do, or the way of the intercepting fist, wasn't just another style. It was a revolutionary philosophy. Lee began to preach the idea of being formless, of having no style. He famously used the analogy of water. Be like water. He'd say, it can flow. or it can crash. This meant adapting to any situation, using whatever worked and immediately discarding what didn't. He borrowed techniques from everywhere: the footwork of boxing, the strategy of fencing, the brutal efficiency of street fighting. He emphasized simplicity, directness, and economy of motion, rejecting the flashy, overly complex moves of many traditional kung fu styles. This was the ultimate insult to the old masters. He wasn't just breaking their rules anymore. He was saying their rules were flawed from the start. He was a heretic, dismantling centuries of tradition piece by piece, and telling the world that the only path to mastery was to find your own. He wasn't just teaching a new way to fight. He was teaching a new way to think. CTA. This revolutionary mindset is what made Bruce Lee a global icon. He wasn't just a movie star. He was a philosopher with fists who proved that true strength comes from the courage to question everything. What do you think? Was Bruce Lee a disrespectful rebel or a necessary revolutionary? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories about the innovators who changed the world, make sure to like and subscribe for more. Conclusion: the friction between Bruce Lee and traditional masters wasn't just about a few kicks and punches. It was about a young upstart who held a mirror up to their world and exposed its limitations. Bruce Lee didn't just create a new martial art. He forced an evil... He is often called the godfather, or father of modern mixed martial arts, a title that, while debated, points to his massive influence. He proved that in a real fight, there are no styles, no traditions, and no masters, only what works. And that is a lesson the world has never forgotten.